Welcome to Crime Beat. I'm Anthony Robart. Tonight, on the eve of an exciting new opportunity, a highly respected physiotherapist disappears.
It was hard, very hard from the time that she went missing.
I just knew there was something wrong.
I was just really worried that something horrible had happened to her, to be honest. Desperate
to find her, family and friends searched. But those efforts came to a devastating end 5 months later.
This is not something that anybody would expect, and it's horrific.
Shock. How could somebody do this to another person, let alone my sister?
It was surreal. It just didn't seem like it was actually happening. It felt like I was watching some B-grade movie that just had a bad director. It was terrible.
I don't think I'll ever get over it. It'll take me to my grave.
Here now is Nancy Hixt with Benevolence Betrayed.
Nestled on the eastern edge of the foothills with the white-capped Rocky Mountains to the west, Calgary brought comfort and new opportunities to Audrey Trudeau. It was exactly what the 44-year-old was looking for in the late 90s as she bounced back following a divorce.
New life, new friends. That's what she wanted, and that's what she got. That's what she had, and she was so proud of it, so proud of it. You know, she bought her new car, she had her own home, she had her job, she had lots of friends.
Audrey was an accomplished physiotherapist with 2 decades of experience. She quickly gained the respect and admiration of her coworkers at the Rocky View Hospital.
Oh, Audrey was very outgoing. She really got the most out of her patients. She would ensure her patients were accountable for doing their exercises, for arriving to appointments, and she was just a really, really fun person to work with. She was very outgoing.
If you needed help with a patient, she'd be the first to offer help. She'd stay late to help you. She did things that just, most people wouldn't have done, and she just went out of her way.
By 1999, Calgary had served its purpose, and she was ready to move back east.
She was so happy. It was the happiest I've ever seen her. She was so excited because she was going to be moving back to Ontario because she loved her family and her siblings, and she was looking forward to going there. She had a job lined up.
Part of the reason she wanted to come home was she wanted to be my son's auntie, and be closer to help raise him because she never had kids of her own. And she came home when my son was born, and that's when she started talking about moving back. So we were all excited.
Audrey listed her house for sale. The realtor took photos of her townhouse, touting the 4-bedroom condo as a room with a view.
If you want to talk to me, she said, you phone me, she said, before the 7th of March. Because she said, the 7th of March, my phones in the house will all be shut down. I said, okay. I said, I'll do that, because I called her constantly.
Her co-workers planned a farewell party at the hospital on her last day. But Audrey didn't show up.
February 26, 1999 was her last day of work, and we had a little party, I think at lunchtime, a potluck, probably something like that planned. So yeah, when we all got to work that morning, we were all quite shocked that she wasn't there because she was the most reliable person in the department, I would say. So it was a bit of a shock when we heard there was a message left that she had had a family crisis in BC and had to go off. Most of us, well, me at the time anyway, assumed that that was a true story, and so figured that we'd hear from her when she got back.
I heard that Audrey wanted to say goodbye to the mountains, and it's something that could have been done on the weekend or it could have been done ahead of time. You don't miss your last day of work where there's been a party organized and you know you have charts to finish signing off on, to go to the mountains. I did not believe one word of that.
None of Audrey's colleagues had spoken to her directly since February 25th, the day before the party that she missed.
One of my colleagues was contacted by her sister, and they were concerned, wondering why Audrey hadn't arrived in Ontario for her next work venture.
Everybody was talking about it. We were all quite worried and just started to think the worst, because it was not like Audrey to not contact somebody. And then, you know, we knew that she was going to Ontario a couple of weeks after her last day of work, and then we heard that she hadn't talked to her siblings or shown up there, so we were all starting to get really worried.
At that time, we encouraged, several of Audrey's work colleagues encouraged the family to put in a missing persons report so that her disappearance, her not being able to, you know, report to work would be investigated. I was just really worried that something horrible had happened to her, to be honest.
Welcome back to Crime Beat. On the eve of a move east to Ontario and an exciting new employment opportunity, a well-respected physiotherapist suddenly disappears. It was out of character for the 44-year-old, and friends and family begin to fear something bad has happened to Audrey Trudeau. Here again is Nancy Hixt with Benevolence Betrayed.
Audrey Trudeau missed her final day of work at the Rocky View Hospital, as well as her going-away party. Days passed and concern grew.
None of my sisters had heard from her either, so we were all just going back and forth, where's Audrey, where's Audrey? And we'd call out west and no answer and this and that. And it's like we knew right away something was wrong. Like, where is she? She would never do this. You know, she would never just disappear. She would never not call us back.
Then, she didn't show up for her new job in Ontario.
I just knew there was something wrong. And she was supposed to call us when she left, and she was going to call us at different stops along the way. And when she should have been on her way, she wasn't.
There was no reason whatsoever for her to be MIA like that. There's none whatsoever. That was so beyond her capacity as a person to do anything like that. You know, that's why we knew something was wrong. Yeah.
What was that?
What? I don't
Excuse me,
remember.
On March 11th, 1999, Audrey Trudeau's family reported her missing to the Calgary Police Service.
The Calgary Police Service received a phone call from Audrey's brother on March 11th. He was representing the family and was very concerned that nobody had heard from Audrey or seen Audrey for a couple weeks. So we're trying to determine, has anybody seen her? Has anybody heard from her? The fact that she didn't show up to her work party, which was scheduled for February 26, was concerning.
Police needed to retrace her steps.
We know on February 25th that she had been bowling with friends. We also know that in that evening, at about 9 o'clock or so, that she had talked to a friend of hers on the telephone. And so that was the last time that any of her friends had seen her or spoken to her, was on February 25th.
After that, Audrey seemingly vanished.
The more people we talk to, the more friends and coworkers that we talk to, the investigators are starting to hear various stories from these different friends. They have heard different stories about where Audrey might be. Some have heard that Audrey had to leave because there was a family emergency. Some have heard that Audrey went to meet somebody. Some people heard that Audrey went to the mountains. Some people heard that Audrey just was depressed. And so as the coworkers in particular start talking to each other and comparing what they've heard, they're starting to go, this doesn't make sense. This is very suspicious.
Police also learned that Audrey had recently helped out a coworker.
No place to stay, and Audrey had the house and, you know, her place, and said, well, I got a spare room. you know. You're welcome to stay there until you sort yourself out. That's the kind of person she was, because she did that before.
She had to leave her apartment. Her girlfriend kicked her out, and she didn't have a place to go. And Audrey, being Audrey, she offered her a room at her house with a couple things like, you know, help pay some bills and a little bit of rent, but that was basically how it came out, and it wasn't supposed to be forever. It was just to help her get her through her tough times.
Deborah Point was a porter at the Rocky View Hospital who often delivered patients to Audrey in the physio department. She contacted police following Audrey's disappearance.
You know, like people at work are, you know, to say like, you know, have you heard anything yet? Like lots of people are worried.
Yeah, well, I don't blame them.
Point said Audrey needed to go to BC and asked her to call her manager at the Rocky View Hospital to let her know she wouldn't be in for her final shift.
Okay. She was just going to call in sick, but unfortunately, you know, like she said to me, that, you know, there's something I need to deal with. Can you please call Annette in the morning and tell her, you know, that I had something to deal with and I won't be able to be in, right? Mm-hmm. And I went out, and I came back and she was gone, type thing, and you know, and unfortunately she left a little. She did leave a note, right? I don't, but it's gone. Of course, it's been 2 weeks. It's in the garbage. Her car's here.
Yeah.
Her car's here, and I've got her SO card. That's all I've got.
Deborah Point said Audrey's townhouse was for sale, and they were in the middle of renovations.
You know, we've got the kitchen floor ripped out here, and we're supposed to get a floor tiled in and stuff. And there's, oh man, like, you know, it's just so many things.
It's really tough for us to tell you that we don't actively search for adults that are missing. As it is right now, we have someone who may have left of her own free will.
I just wish, you know, she'd walk through the door, that's all.
I know. It's pretty tough not knowing.
I was only 62, I was only 3, and she was...
Audrey's siblings reached out to her roommate, hoping she might have heard from their sister.
I phoned a couple times, actually, and spoke to her roommate and asked for Audrey, and she would keep telling me she's not there. So I would just tell her to call me when she got back. And she never called me, so I'd call again. And she never called me.
Because I called one time and she answered. She did answer. And that's when I found out, oh, she's in BC. And I go, why the heck would she go to BC? To say goodbye to the mountains. And I'm going, no.
I think on the third or fourth call, I can't quite remember, and I said, you have her phone me. I want to talk to her. Yeah, okay. Well, she never phoned me. She never phoned me.
On March 15th, 1999, nearly 3 weeks after Audrey disappeared, her roommate called police again.
It's Deb Point calling, and we filed a missing claims report last week type thing, and the weekend's kind of gone by, and I haven't heard anything. I was just wondering if there was anything that would put my mind a little bit at ease here.
Okay, who's missing?
It's Audrey. She's my roommate.
Okay. There's been a lot of people checking on...
Yeah, family, everybody.
Right. But we have not located.
You have not?
Audrey has not been located.
I haven't heard much from the family this weekend either, stuff, right? So I thought, well, am I just going crazy? So I just thought I'd call just to see if there's anything. I'm just worried.
Weeks passed, and there was no sign of Audrey Trudeau, who failed to show up for her last day of work as a physiotherapist at the Rocky View Hospital.
As we go to the house and we're doing inquiries, what we notice is that Audrey's car is still at the house, so that is strange for us. Deb was also concerned that she had not heard from her roommate. She thought that her roommate may have gone to the mountains to visit the mountains before she left Alberta, but she was also concerned, and we asked her to come in so that we could talk to her, and she voluntarily went to the police station so we could interview her.
So, nervous about your roommate? And we are too. We're investigating a missing person, and I guess Audrey went missing here a little while ago, and nobody seems to know what happened to her.
I'll just give you some information because I know you're going to probably come across a few surprises or whatever, but I've never really related to the name Deb. Okay, so I like Chris.
All right, so you moved in around the end of January then, eh? And things were going pretty good and never had any disagreements or anything?
She also reiterated what investigators had heard, which is that Audrey was really missing the mountains and was going to miss the mountains when she left for Ontario. She said that Audrey had told her that she was going to go to British Columbia, to Kelowna, before she made her move to Ontario.
Okay, and what day did she leave?
She left Thursday evening.
Thursday evening?
Yes.
Deb Point told us that Audrey said that if she's not back by Friday, that she could go to Rockyview Hospital and pick up her last check for her. That would be really helpful. Deb also told us that Audrey had a very nice sapphire ring that she left with Deb to look after while she went on her trip, and also told her to look after her vehicle.
As the interview continued, Point said the day before her roommate went missing, on February 24th, Audrey decided they should do some renovations.
She had wanted to get rid of the carpet in the kitchen forever.
Who had, Audrey?
Audrey. She even had parquet little flooring blocks picked out.
Oh, really?
That, you know, to choose from and stuff.
Okay.
So we decided Wednesday night that we were going to rip the thing up and roll it out. I think it was Thursday morning before she left for work that we took it out.
Thursday morning, where you took what out?
The carpet.
So people are suggesting that something might have happened to Audrey here. You know,
No, nothing happened.
Yeah, if you know what I mean.
Nothing.
I'm not suggesting that for a minute.
Nothing happened to Audrey here.
We just want to cover everything, if you know what I'm saying.
Nothing happened to Audrey here.
That same day, Deborah Point gave consent to police to search Audrey's townhouse.
Again, we have a very cooperative roommate, and they asked permission to be able to go to the residence and take a look at the residence and see if there was any indication of where Audrey may have gone. You can tell the carpet has been ripped out, as Deb said. That was one of the first things that they saw.
Police had photos to refer to, taken by Audrey's realtor a month earlier. In addition to the carpet being removed, officers noticed a comforter was missing off one of the beds. Room by room, forensic investigators scoured the home.
They found some things that were on the surface looked troubling. The crime scenes unit used luminol, and luminol is a chemical that reacts to blood, and they found what they believe to be blood plus drag marks from the main floor down to the basement. Investigators now know that something bad happened in that residence.
As the investigation continued, police didn't release any information about what they found in the home. By then, Audrey had been missing for 3 weeks.
We all decided to try to go looking for her. And we had therapists going out to parks looking for her. I remember driving home from work, looking in ditches to see if there was maybe a body there. It was consuming us.
We knew that Deb was driving her car and wearing her ring after Audrey went missing. And so, you know, we started to think this isn't normal behavior. But I had heard from people at the hospital that she had borrowed money from them and not paid them back, and that she'd had a problem with gambling. There were a few phone calls, and I started to take notes because some of her stories weren't terribly consistent. There's something about a family crisis, and then there was something about an ex-boyfriend in BC, and it just started to sort of seem a bit fishy.
At the end of March 1999, Audrey's sister Frances went to her townhouse.
And Deborah and her mother was there, and they were packing boxes, and went in and just, hi, how are you? You know, I'm trying to be nice, because I was told by the police I had to be nice. So I was trying, and I remember Audrey's ring was sitting on the kitchen table, and I said to her, you know, you said Audrey was away. Yeah, she is. I said, no. Audrey don't leave without her ring. She had a beautiful $4,000 sapphire and diamond ring. Beautiful. So anyhow, I said, I'm taking that ring. No, you can't. I'm taking that ring. So I did. And I called the police. The police came over that day. I gave them the ring because it's evidence.
Several days later, Audrey's roommate, Deborah Point, was once again questioned by Calgary police investigators.
So whatever you say, if you're charged with an offense, and then you say between now and then maybe given evidence at the trial, should you be charged? Okay? Everybody emphasizes you're not charged with anything like that. Okay? Alright. Something's happened to Audrey here. Whether she has gone and committed suicide, she died of accidental causes, she was taken out and murdered. I don't know. I don't know. We have our suspicions, but that's it.
Officers confronted Point about suspicious activity they'd noticed with Audrey's bank account.
There's a bunch of checks written on her account. My guess is, if you do a handwriting analysis on it, I'll bet you the signature at the bottom is forged. And I'll bet you did.
As we're looking at things like banking activity and whatnot, we noticed that on February 26th, the day after she went missing, that there was a check that had been cashed from Audrey's account with her name on it. As we continued that investigation into banking activity, we noticed that between February 6th and February 26th, there were 12 checks that totaled just a little over $5,100 that had been cashed. They're forged with Audrey's name on Audrey's account. Again, it doesn't mean that she's responsible for the disappearance, but she's certainly number one suspect.
Is that why her credit lines have been maxed? Because you're forcing her to give you money? You know what I'm suggesting? I'm suggesting it has something to do with the disappearance of Audrey. There's just so many things that point that something happened here to Audrey that we can't explain. And they all point to you.
Following the interview, Deborah Point was free to go. No charges were laid.
It's a difficult position to be in as an investigator where you're pretty confident that there's been foul play, pretty confident that you know some of the parties that are involved in it, and yet there's not much you can do at this point. You're continuing the investigation, but you really need a lead. You really need something to come forward that will break open the case. As much as we may do surveillance or we may do other investigative tactics, we're waiting for that one big break.
Months passed, seasons changed, and there was still no sign of Audrey Trudeau.
It was hard, very hard from the time that she went missing.
I ended up in crisis therapy to help me manage the stress. The longer it went on, it's hard to fathom, you know? It was really hard to fathom. Are we ever going to find her, you know? Where is she, you know? How can she ever, by that, you know, you knew, even though you didn't want to admit it, you knew she was gone. Like, there's just no way she'd be just alive somewhere. That just wasn't even in the cards. We knew she was gone. It was all for me, like, find her so we can deal with it, you know, and bring her home.
My family was falling apart. I didn't know how to talk to my mom. She was crying all the time.
You're a what if this, what if that, maybe this, maybe that. But it's something, it was a day-to-day thing that you live day-to-day to find out and wait.
The case was growing cold. We didn't know where Audrey was, and there wasn't new evidence necessarily coming forward. But we did get a call, seemingly totally unrelated, but we did get a call from a woman who claimed that Deb Point had stolen her credit card and used it fraudulently, and had also done a renovation fraud, essentially. And she said it was Deb Point. It was a friend of Deb Point's.
Deborah Point was questioned about the alleged fraud in early July 1999. No charges were laid.
We have somebody reporting that Deb Point has committed a fraud against them as well. It would certainly seem to indicate that maybe there's some type of money problems or something that's going on. We know that for sure that she had done at least several forgeries at the time on Audrey's account. I think what it's doing for us is painting a bit of a picture that Deb isn't as innocent as she may have tried to portray herself.
Then, nearly 5 months to the day after Audrey Trudeau went missing, there was a break in the case. The discovery was deeply disturbing.
On July 21st, the Calgary Police Service received a phone call from a woman that indicated that some people related to her had gone into her garage, it was a detached garage, and had smelled a foul odor coming from what they thought were some boxes that were in there. And the boxes had Allegiance Health stenciled onto the box, and they had in black felt marker the name Chris on one of the flaps, and they were secured with lots of duct tape. And so the homeowner said, go ahead and open the box. That's strange. I don't know why there'd be a smell coming. And unfortunately for those individuals, they opened up the box. They noticed that there were lots of mothballs in the box. They noticed that there were multiple garbage bags, and as they opened up, unfortunately, they discovered some body parts.
Human remains.
Human remains. Police attend, and what they discovered was that there were 3 boxes. There were 2 smaller boxes and a larger box. The larger box was on like a dolly, and all the boxes had Allegiance written on it. They also had in felt marker Chris handwritten on the boxes. And as we opened up the boxes, we discovered the dismembered remains of Audrey Trudeau.
Audrey Trudeau's body was found in a garage belonging to the woman who had complained to police a month earlier that Deborah Point was defrauding her out of money.
As the investigators tracked back where the boxes came from, they located a friend of Deb Point's and a friend that had assisted Deb with moving the boxes into the garage on February 28th of that year. The friend thought that they were computer parts, and she helped Deb with her truck move these boxes over to this garage.
The horrific discovery made headlines across the country.
I shouldn't have, but I looked at the news and found the circumstances and shock. Like, how could somebody do this to another person, let alone my sister?
I was just told initially that they had found her. And I thought I had a heart attack, to be honest with you, because it's very painful. But when I found out the circumstances, I just got instantly angry. And I was very angry. My heart's been broken. My family of Audrey was stripped from me.
It was surreal. It just didn't seem like it was actually happening. It felt like I was watching some B-grade movie that just had a bad director. It was terrible.
Police watched as their primary suspect saw the news as well.
There was an article in one of the newspapers in Calgary that indicated that a body had been discovered. It did not have anybody's name in it, but it talked about the address and it talked about a body being discovered. We had surveillance on Deb Point, and we actually saw when she read that article. That would have been her indication that Audrey had been found.
Covert surveillance officers monitored Point's every move.
Deb was driving a station wagon vehicle that belonged to a relative. And one of the things surveillance noticed is that in the back of the vehicle, there were some boxes that said Allegiance Health on it. There was a one particular point where they lost sight of her. She got out on foot, she had something in her hand, and we lost sight of her. She was gone for just a few seconds, 40 seconds, and then she was back in the vehicle. When we went to the general location where she was, we noticed that there was a dumpster back there and that there was a garbage bag thrown into the dumpster. When investigators looked inside that garbage bag, they found a flap from a box that had handwritten in felt marker, black felt marker, the name Chris. It's the exact same writing, the exact same place as what we saw in the garage with the boxes that had the remains of Audrey Trudeau.
On July 22nd, 1999, one day after the remains of Audrey Trudeau were discovered, her roommate, Deborah Point, was taken into custody.
What were you told when you were arrested there, Deb?
I was going to be charged for second-degree murder.
Here's what happened. Last night at about 8 o'clock, some kids were cleaning out a garage on 33rd Avenue, and they came upon some suspicious boxes. They check in the boxes and they find some body parts in there. Today at the autopsy, the body parts have been positively identified as Audrey's.
Audrey was in the garage?
Yeah. She was. You're not aware of that?
No, I'm not.
The last little while, things have been really starting to go bad for you. We've got you on video down at a bank using Audrey's line of credit and taking money out of an account that we haven't done anything on that. We know you got big time financial problems. We know that your life is slowly caving in on you. Everything's coming to a head. Last night when we go in the garage and find the body, everything caved in on you. Absolutely everything.
I had nothing.
There's nothing left. Just listen to me. There's nothing else. It collapsed last night when Audrey was found. The body was found in the garage. Paula says you're the one who put it there.
That's not true.
It's absolutely true. The evidence is overwhelming. There's lots of evidence. You're being arrested today and you're being charged with second-degree murder. There is nothing, absolutely nothing you can say that's going to prevent that from happening. At the end of the day, you'll be in jail, charged with this offense. If you think that we've been sitting around since February doing nothing,
I'm not saying that.
You're wrong. Do you have access to all the boxes and that kind of stuff at the hospital?
Yeah. I didn't put Audrey in any boxes and nobody helped me do anything that I didn't do.
You're going to have to face the facts, lady. You can sit there and you can say, Dave, I didn't do it. I didn't put the boxes there. You know, I don't believe it. Detective Shaw doesn't believe it. And there are 6 other homicide detectives out there who don't believe it either.
Welcome back. For 5 agonizing months, loved ones of Audrey Trudeau prayed she'd be found safe. Instead, her body was found dismembered in a garage. Here now is Nancy Hixt with a conclusion of Benevolence Betrayed.
In October of 2000, a jury trial began for Deborah Point, accused of the second-degree murder of her coworker and roommate Audrey Trudeau. The prosecution outlined the case as a cold and callous murder of someone who was helping Point by giving her a place to stay when she had nowhere else to go.
Audrey had planned to move to Ontario where her family resides. She had accepted a position as a physiotherapist at a hospital in Ontario. So she was in the process of packing up her life and moving. So this was meant to be a temporary arrangement. So Ms. Point moved in, and during that time, it was clear that Ms. Point had struggled with an addiction to gambling, and she also didn't have a regular income coming in, and she continued to struggle with that gambling addiction. And it was alleged at the time and found to be proven that Ms. Point forged a number of checks belonging to Ms. Trudeau. The Crown's theory was that there was likely a confrontation between Ms. Point and Ms. Trudeau about the missing funds. And we're talking about $5,000, which is a significant amount of money. And it was at that time that we say the murder happened, after the theft was discovered by Ms. Trudeau.
Court heard it was believed Audrey was killed on the evening of February 25th. The prosecution alleged Point later dismembered her body and put it into 3 boxes. Crime scenes investigators examined the victim's home twice, once in March of 1999, and then 5 months later in August of 1999, after Audrey's body was found.
DNA results came back showing that there was some blood in the basement, as well as the dining room and the bathroom. And that blood belonged to Audrey. The realtor who was working for Audrey to sell the house had taken pictures of the house to list it for sale, and the police had obtained those photos and compared those photos to the house and noticed that the carpet would have been intact at the time those pictures were taken, and that comforter, which was missing, was also depicted in those realtor photos. So they had some baseline comparison. That comforter was later discovered with Audrey's body in those boxes.
One of Point's friends told court she helped the accused move the boxes into the garage where the body was later found, 3 days after Audrey was last seen alive, on February 28, 1999.
Deborah had asked a friend if she could store those boxes, claiming that there was computer equipment inside. So the friend had helped her move those boxes into the garage. She helped her, she was there for that, and of course, she could say where those boxes were moved to.
The boxes were traced back to the Rocky View Hospital. A coworker confirmed to police she saw Point taking them from the hospital on February 27th, 2 days after Audrey was last seen alive.
There was also the name Chris written on top of the boxes. Chris is a name that Deborah Point went by, and many people knew her as Chris as well.
The medical examiner who performed the autopsy presented disturbing evidence of a violent murder.
Very graphic. I would say this is probably one of the most graphic cases I've ever seen. The body that was recovered and the pictures that were shown to the jury are disturbing. The injuries were to the back of the head. They were stabbing or bashing type injuries or crushing type injuries. There were 15 of them that were noted by the medical examiner, and again, all to the back of the head with an axe-like weapon. So Audrey would have been completely vulnerable, would have had no opportunity to defend herself. And these were significant, brutal injuries that caused her death.
Deborah Point maintained her innocence.
She didn't do it. She said it just wasn't her, and she stuck by that. I mean, I had to call her because she denied it. Someone's going to deny such a crime of murder and dismembering, and I think she had to testify. And I never, as counsel, if she ever said to me, well, I really did it, but I will never admit it, I mean, I wouldn't have called her to the stand. It was a circumstantial case. There was no smoking gun, no confession, no eyewitness. It was a very strong circumstantial case.
The jury took 2 days to deliberate as Audrey Trudeau's family held on to hope for justice in her case.
I'm pretty shaken up. I'll be glad when it's all over. And my sister's there. They're anxiously waiting for the results of this too.
Jurors found Deborah Point guilty of all charges.
She was convicted of what she was charged with, so guilty of second-degree murder and the indignity. With murder, it always attracts a life sentence.
In sentencing Point to life in prison with no chance of parole for 20 years, the justice called Audrey's murder an evil and cowardly surprise attack. Point appealed, but it was dismissed. She served 15 years of her sentence at the Edmonton Women's Institution before applying for early release.
She is a convicted killer serving life in prison for the gruesome killing of a Calgary physiotherapist. And now, 17 years after the murder, she wants out of jail.
Linda, Deborah Point is serving a life sentence for second-degree murder with no chance of parole for 20 years. Point is convicted of killing her former roommate, Audrey Trudeau. Today, a hearing was held in front of Alberta's Chief Justice. Point is applying for early release under the so-called faint hope clause. The first step is to have a judicial review of her parole ineligibility. One of the key factors is she's never accepted responsibility for the death. If the Chief Justice rules in Point's favor, the matter will then go before a jury. The ultimate decision will be up to the National Parole Board. So far, Point has served just under 17 years. Family of the victim, Audrey Trudeau, wrote multiple victim impact statements, and they are very much opposed to this application.
Her denial of the offense was a significant factor. Deborah Point, to this day, has not acknowledged that she committed the murder. She continues to deny it. If you look at the judge's decision, he reiterates what the trial judge said, which was the evidence was overwhelming against Deborah Point.
Her application was dismissed, and she continued her time in custody. She was eventually moved to Buffalo Sage Healing Lodge. She's not Indigenous, but chose to follow the facility's programming. In 2021, Deborah Point was granted day parole, and in 2024, she was released on full parole.
My father was a full-blood Ojibwe. He was from a place called Manitoulin Island here in Ontario. And my mother's English, so we're half native. She'd managed to get out of jail, go to a halfway house run by Indigenous people, and become a warrior, really. You don't learn peace, you don't learn acceptance, you do not learn how to deal with what you did when you never admitted you did it.
Point now lives and works in Edmonton.
I promised Audrey I would keep her in jail, but I couldn't keep her there anymore. I just couldn't do it. I have an up-to-date picture of her. I'm releasing that picture. My family has a right to know who this person is that they have to look out for.
Audrey's wedding picture.
More than 25 years after her murder, Audrey Trudeau's family feels the pain of her loss every day.
And it's as raw today as it was then. And personally, I don't think I'll ever get over it. It'll take me to my grave.
She's just the most giving person. The world has lost a person that made people happy.
According to the Parole Board of Canada, Deborah Point is in a relationship with another offender who is also on full parole. While on release, Point is not allowed to gamble and has to provide documentation of her finances on a regular basis. Over the years, Audrey Trudeau's co-workers have created several memorials for her at the Rocky View Hospital as her friends and family continue to honor and remember her. I'm Anthony Robart. Thank you for joining us tonight on Crime Beat.
Want more episodes of Crime Beat?
Listen to the Crime Beat podcast now for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcast. And for past episodes of Crime Beat, go to the Global TV app, visit globaltv.com, or check out our Crime Beat YouTube page.